That's it. Okay, and I'm not going to share my screen. So, okay, let me admit some more people. And yeah, why don't we get started? Eva has a lot to cover. It's probably going to run more than an hour, probably more closer to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think that's it. So, but it's going to be chock full of information. There's just a ton to know. And I'm going to let Eva just make the introduction of how much she's been involved in this, in CHAD and in this world. So take it away, Eva.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheila. Hi, everybody. My name is Eva O'Malley. For the past 14 years, I have been running a chapter of CHAD. CHAD stands for Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And the reason I came to CHAD was because I was looking for information about my son, who was hitting his brick wall at that time. But it also led me to my diagnosis. And all I can say is that that was kind of his gift to me. Because from that point on, I was able to do a lot more than I ever thought I could do. So what we're going to do in this next hour is kind of go through the more or less ADHD 101 stuff. So some of it may be redundant for you, but some of it you might not know. Actually, while I was preparing this, there's a lot that changed. And so I had to tweak a few of my slides to reflect those changes. So research and development of things in this area are ongoing. It is the most researched disorder of childhood that there is. There is hundreds of thousands of paper on ADHD, and it all is good to know, because when we have that understanding, we can refute other people who may not think that ADHD is all that it is. And we could also then understand how important it is to know the science behind ADHD, because then you can globalize that across child development, period. And that helps with your other maybe non-ADHD kids. So I'm married, I think it's 37 years this year. And I have 3 adult children. One is married, one is my son, the next one is my son, and he just started going to school. And my youngest is total polar opposite of all the rest of us. She is in her 4th year of med school and just finishing up her rotations. She matches in March, which means that she's going to see what residencies that she matched with. So we're really excited for her and proud of her for all that accomplishment. And I kind of knew that about her when she was even still very young. She was the kid that came down and said, you know, I asked her why she had her pajamas on. She says, it's getting dark outside. So, you know, we used to think something maybe was wrong with her because all of us were ADHD and she was the only neurotypical one. So that poor kid had to put up with 4 other people in the family who just didn't see things the same way, but it's all right. So ADHD is a chronic neurodevelopmental disorder. Now in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Psychiatric Illnesses or Mental Illnesses, it doesn't have it as a developmental disorder. So unfortunately, even though it is causing developmental problems, it's not looked at that way by the people that, like, insurance will look up this disorder, whether or not it is going to get any kind of coverage for being a developmental disorder. No, and I don't think it counts either with New Jersey. New Jersey doesn't see it as a developmental disorder, although the CDC does, the NIH does, everybody else does. The DSM is what matters. And so far it's not considered neurodevelopmental, it's considered neurobiological. But that's an important thing I found out, that the DSM really is kind of the linchpin when it comes to that kind of decision making. So it affects about 11% of school-age children. And that is a huge number compared to what it was when I first started at CHAD. 14 years ago, it was between 3 and 5%. So when they did the recounting, they also included people that ever had testing done for ADHD. And so the criteria for that number was a little bit more broad, but it's still a significant number of people that have this disorder. So symptoms of ADHD can go into childhood, go from childhood into adulthood 75% of the time. So it is not limited to childhood. That's also something that people used to believe about ADHD. So you know what, I think we're gonna go and forward the slides a little bit here and just go through some of the stuff that we're gonna cover. We're gonna understand some of the common myths about ADHD. We're going to describe how it's defined in the DSM, so we get a good working base knowledge of how doctors go about diagnosing it, or psychologists or anybody who's qualified to do that. We're going to learn the attention process. We're going to understand what executive functions are. And then we're going to compare this to disorders that mimic ADHD. Sometimes there is a differential and it's not always ADHD. So some of the things we have to get out of the way or consider as well. So most of the time when things don't fit right, there's something else going on. Describe the common co-occurring stuff with ADHD. So things that 80% of the time there's a co-occurring feature of ADHD, and so we want to look for them. We really want to make sure that we're covering everything, and list some of the problems that can come from untreated ADHD. And as the research continues, we're finding out more and more what a serious condition this really is. And when somebody has a kid who has mild impairment, that's kind of hard to believe. But when somebody has a kid who has severe impairment, that's not so hard to believe, because you know how difficult this is going to be for them in getting the things that are easier for kids who don't have ADHD. So let me flip forward. So some of the myths about ADHD. People with ADHD have lower paying job. Truth or myth? You help me out with this, you guys? Sheila?
Oh yeah, sure. We can put it on the chat if you guys want to just chime in. People with ADHDs, okay, everyone's saying myth. No,
it's absolutely true.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a study done with pretty much a sizable cohort, meaning there was a lot of people in the study, and it reflected, I think, the see if we can get that slide up here. It was done in I think it was done in Canada, and it was in their early 30s. So in that time frame, people with ADHD definitely are not getting the jobs that they should be getting because of the social emotional parts of ADHD that may have prevented them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know. I was I was really surprised about that, but yeah, there's pretty good evidence about it, and it doesn't surprise me at all. My son is just going to school now, and he turned 27 yesterday. So there, as we will learn, we'll understand that social emotional lag is common. And by the time they're 30, 35, they do catch up. And I know I just made people cringe when they say that, but this is in the case of a severe impairment with ADHD, and there's levels of impairment. So you cannot have ADHD, or we covered the one about it's limited to childhood, but stimulants cause tic disorders or lead to substance use issues.
Okay, truth or myth, guys? What do you think? Stimulants cause tic disorders, lead to, what is that, SUDs again?
Yeah, substance use disorders. So alcohol.
Okay, we have one true. I'm gonna say myth.
It is. And I used to think, oh my God, so many parents tell me that their kids started ticking after they started the stimulants. And well, when I was in that guideline writing committee, I was sitting next to the guy who's like the leader in in tic disorders in the country, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was there for that very purpose. And I said to him, what do you really? And you know, I'm just asking him, and you know, I'm like, no, you're wrong.
Wait, so is it a truth or a myth? The stimulants cause disorder?
It's actually a myth. The stimulants don't cause tic disorders. They can reveal tics when somebody has a tic disorder, but maybe
it doesn't
you
cause it.
Know it if they didn't have the stimulant. Yeah.
Got
and no,
it.
It doesn't lead to substance use disorders. Actually, treating ADHD, which is a combined effort, not just medication, but treating ADHD is actually protective of substance use disorders. So people aren't going to grow up with this desire to self-medicate.
Gotcha.
Not maybe necessarily their ADHD problems, but the stuff that comes along with it, the depression, the anxiety, and so forth, because it's just like, it's like, you know, those sci-fi movies where those mines just stick to the outside of the ship.
Yeah. All right.
You don't have ADHD if you have a college degree.
What? Wait, no, you can't. You can have ADHD if you have a college degree. I have it.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a myth. Myth. Oh, I'm sorry. I should be asking everybody. Yeah, everyone's saying myth.
Yeah, it is a myth, and you definitely can do well in college. A lot of times people start and stop and start and stop, or they you know, they know right away to put these student services in place and ask for more time with assignments.
Right.
Yeah, one of my assignments, you know, SMART doesn't help you do things like this. So I actually had an 8-week added on to the course to finish my work that I needed to do, because writing and reading was so hard for me. But yeah, as long as you do it ahead of the class, and this is with your kids transitioning, if they do transition into college right out of high school, really important to go to student services and to lay all that down, that you need extra time. And it's not so much because, it takes you too long, but sometimes processing the work needs longer.
Right.
Okay. So it's just being lazy. Parents, no, that's not true. It's not right. Okay. How can medicine called a stimulant help my hyperactive child? So that is a.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is a truth. It can help a hyperactive child, because of the way it works is not stimulating the child, it's stimulating the production of dopamine. So your dopamine, your dopamine production increases, and it continually increases for the life of that pill. ADHD goes away. Now, adulthood, we did that. Oh, actually, I put 2 of them. See, I didn't realize I put it in the same way. ADD is the term for inattentive ADHD. That's the last one.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. I'm going to say myth.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
They're trying to get rid of it completely. So ADHD is just ADHD now. And ADD used to be attention deficit disorder. So that didn't include the other stuff, the impulsivity and the hyperactivity and so forth.
Got it.
So yeah, that is.
Let me let somebody in. I'm sorry. Sometimes I have to look at hi, Gladys. All right. We're okay. Go, Eva.
Yeah, we're up to the DSM, and basically the DSM says people with ADHD show a persistent pattern of inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity that interferes with function and development. Function or development. And so basically that's their definition of it. The criteria for inattentive ADHD is 6 or more symptoms of inattention for children up to age 16. Now that they raised because it used to be 12.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it used to be 8.
Okay.
So they were really limiting when the symptoms were supposed to happen by. And by increasing it to 16 and 17, they absolutely captured more people. So yes, the prevalence levels went up. Symptoms of inattention have been present for at least 6 months and are inappropriate for a developmental level. So the next slide is showing the criteria. Often distracted, unable to play or take part in leisure activities quietly. So not even stuff that's fun to do is easy. Blurts out answers before the question has been complete, has trouble waiting their turn, fidgets, taps hands, squirms in their seat. Am I getting this? Oh yeah, okay, yep. Waiting his turn, yeah. So this also is some criteria for the next one, which is the hyperactive impulsivity. Again, also 6 or more symptoms and 5 or more before 17. Must be present for 6 months to the extent and inappropriate for the developmental level. And see, I messed these up. I totally mixed them up. But okay, so fidgets with, taps hands, leaves seat situation, runs, climbs, unable to play, often on the go, talks excessively, blurts out the answer, and often interrupts or intrudes on others, butts into conversations. So it's kind of like a menu. You have to have 6 of these, 6 of these.
Right.
You know, and then you have a full thing. But it also it's then divided into levels. So if there's only a few extra things besides the perfunctory 6, then you would probably say it's mild. If there was, you know, 3 or 4 more, then it's kind of moderate ADHD severity. And if it's, you know, more than 5 extra besides the 6 or 7 that 6 or 5 that you need, right, it would be considered severe. So if you're ticking your box at all of these things, then it's showing up a lot and in a lot of situations. But in addition to those criteria, these conditions need to be also met, and those were the must be presented for before the age of 12 years. And several symptoms are present in 2 or more settings. So home, work, school, out with the friends, in the supermarket, you know, other activities, other domains of life. That the clear evidence that the symptoms interfere or reduce the quality of social, school, or work functioning, and that the symptoms do not happen during the course of schizophrenia, which happens to be mostly diagnosed in the latter part of adolescence, so 17, 18, 19, or other psychotic disorder, and they're not better explained by any other mental disorder, such as a mood disorder, or dissociative, or personality disorders. So as long as they're clear of any of those, you get then the next slide, which contains the different presentations of ADHD. So it used to be type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1 was the inattentive presentation. Type 2 was the predominantly hyperactive impulsive. And the combined presentation was just a little of everything. Most kids present with the combined. Girls are the only exception to that. Girls tend to present with the inattentive presentation mostly, and largely goes undiagnosed because of that. Yeah. So girls are good at being girls, and boys are jumping on the furniture and have different ways of, you know, expressing themselves. So girls tend to, if the impairment is mild, go unnoticed. And my daughter was 20 before she was diagnosed. So she was always running. She ran cross country for 6 years. In the summer, she was swimming. She had like 3 jobs at once, all throughout high school. So she kept busy. She medicated herself with activity. And so that's a natural thing that somebody might do. They might be busy all the time and you never see the symptoms because they're generating enough neurotransmitter to do what they have to do and be what they have to be in the day. But because symptoms over time, symptoms can change over time, they will present differently over time as well. So the rest, the hyperactivity becomes really clinically insignificant as you age. It becomes more of an internal restlessness. People may, click their pen or twirl their hair or bounce their knee. That's a good one. My husband, he taps his leg like he's got music going on, and there's no music playing. He just has it in his head, but this is a form of hyperactivity that has more or less retreated and become internal. It's more socially acceptable than climbing on the furniture. And the same thing with kids. When they become teenagers, they're not as, hyperactive.
Right.
So the intention process, what do humans have to do to pay attention? Humans have to do a lot of stuff to pay attention. And that's my neurobiology, which we might get to, but I didn't do too much with that. So paying attention is a broad term that when broken down has many components. It's not as easy as it seems to do because it's a very complex ability that the brain has. ADHD interferes with this process by having difficulty with the sum of these components. The active paying attention will improve when there is highly interesting information being presented to that individual. And that's because that highly interesting information is generating interest and it's generating a little bit of excitement and it's generating a little bit of adrenaline. And that's a neurotransmitter, and what helps at that point the child to be able to do the rest of this. So a novel teacher, a teacher who has a style of bringing it every day where they're fun and they're novel and they keep those kids engaged, that's going to be the best teacher for your child because they're going to be able to more naturally pay attention and focus. And that's hard to do. I'm not saying teachers, have it easy. They don't. It's probably really difficult to do.
Okay.
So the first part of paying attention is picking one thing to pay attention to. The next one is that ability to choose the correct stimuli from all the ones that you picked to make sure that, and to be able to pick which one is relevant. So the fan is turning above the teacher's head. You have to pick which one you're going to pay attention to. Okay, because there's multiple stimulus coming at you, and there's also stimulus coming from inside the child, from their own thoughts. So they have to learn how to be able to zone that in. Part of paying attention also then is sustaining that attention. So once you picked the thing you're paying attention to, able to maintain that and still listen to what the teacher is saying. I think after 3 words, teacher went want, 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 want in my head because by 3rd grade, I was already getting things written on my report card like dream on, fair one. I don't think it was about the Aerosmith song. So the next one is the ability to inhibit the internal and external stimuli when they come flying at you. So distractions, kids, pets coming into the room when they're online and trying to attend school, or something going on in the classroom. It could be as much as just a car passing by and it pulls your attention to another direction. Even though you've heard a car thousands of times before, that car moving by is something that will pull you out of that trance. And the ability to shift attention to what was being focused on to now the new thing. So I sometimes recommend for teachers to play music when it's a new subject coming up. So it's like, okay, everybody put your math books away and take out your social studies book and turn to page, 96. And you go walking by Eva's desk and Eva's still, coloring in her math paper. So, but playing music at that point would engage another stimulus, and that would break that trance. Because if you're playing the Macarena, hey, gets everybody's attention, and that means that we're on to something new. I'm not sure it works all the time, but it can work. And maybe if you do use different music, you don't have to use the same song. So keep it novel, keep it different. Those would be some good suggestions. So also with intention is incentivizing. Like when you incentivize chores with an extra half hour of TV, you create a more impactful motivational state. So what kind of happens with ADHD is that part of the brain that needs to light up is a structure called the anterior cingulate. It's a structure here in the forebrain or the prefrontal brain. And it has the ability to motivate and do decision making, motivate, reward, and decision making. So it's kind of like half and half, but they all kind of go together, right? Making chores with an added incentive will help stimulate that part of the brain, help access that part of the brain, so that thought becomes a motivation, and that motivation turns into plan, and then plan turns into action. It's something that that I've seen I've seen kids not be able to do that. It provides like incentives actually after a while provide absolutely not enough stimulation. And I'm not sure whether it's not because the kid thinks, oh, well, I'm going to get it anyway, eventually, or if they just can't motivate themselves to do these things as well as a child who doesn't have this disorder can. So we're moving right along. How are we doing on time?
Good. Doing good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, doing great.
So the executive functions of the brain are something took me a long time to understand. But as I like to say, I just kept rewinding Russell Barkley when I watched his lectures on YouTube. I would just kind of slide that little thing back again and re-listen to the 50-word sentence that he just spit out. And,
oh wait, who's this? This is
Dr. Russell Barkley, who
okay.
Kind of like if you've ever dived deep into the internet, you might find him in ADHD land.
Oh, okay. That's a good name to know.
Oh, he's the best thing to know.
Okay.
The last time I met him, I joked with him. I says, I could finish all of your sentences because I wanted to commit a lot of this to memory. It was easier to do that and explain that. So here I go, and I'm looking at my slides, and I go on the CHAD website to bring in some new information. Remember I was telling you I was, tweaking my slides a little bit, right? He went and changed everything. He changed his.
Oh, yeah?
Oh my God, yeah. I was like, I have to write him and say, you know what you did to me?
Oh, really?
You totally tripped me up. Well, because I understand it enough to explain it. It's just now he calls it something different because he's consolidated a lot of what he felt were not maybe true executive skills, but fall under a particular title, a particular name. So I had to go back and kind of rewrite all the stuff that I know about executive function.
Well, thanks for doing that. We
No problem.
appreciate the most recent information, which is
Yeah,
great.
this is up to date stuff, because like
Cool.
I said, I went back on the website to take a look. So here we go. Where is my slide? I am so behind here. Okay. So executive function refers to the brain function that activate, organize, integrate, and manage other functions. It enables individuals to account for short and long-term consequences of their actions and plan for those results. It allows also individuals to make real-time evaluations of their actions and make necessary adjustments of those actions if they're not achieving the desired result. So basically, the way he always explained it, and it still counts as true now, is executive functions are the things that you do to yourself. It is all those abilities for managing you. And those things that you do to yourself, they used to be inhibit, they used to be planning and problem solving, they used to be emotional regulation, they also were your working memory, then something called mind mapping, self-talk, and I already said planning and problem solving. So those now have changed into different things, but I'll explain them because we're going to go through them one by one. All right, so let's break it down a little bit. Dr. Barkley uses an inhibition model for explaining executive skills or executive functions. Either one is correct. There are now 4 areas that he wants to put these things in. Nonverbal working memory, which is the same as what we call short-term memory.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Internalized speech, which he calls verbal working memory. Self-regulation of affect, motivation, and arousal, basically your emotions. And motivation is an emotional state. So it falls under that, because in the DSM, they took out emotional regulation sometime in the 70s with regards to ADHD. And you can't just like take it out. It still exists, you know. Yeah. You ask any parent with a kid with ADHD, are they sensitive? Are they easily angered? Are they expressing very, very intense emotions when it's not necessary? Yep. Yes. So it definitely is in there. It's going to stay in there. I think he's being a little bit more in line, I guess, with maybe the DSM. And that's maybe, I don't even know why he's doing it, but I'm glad that I understand what he's doing. And then the 4th one is Reconstitution. And that is that planning, problem solving, and basically being productive in society as a person. So bear with me now on the next one. Okay. So nonverbal working memory, or as we call it, short-term memory, is the ability to hold information in mind while manipulating new information. And an example of that would be like a mathematical word problem. And you're getting this set up, you're getting information, but now you have to rely on your multiplication times table facts to solve the problem. So this is getting new information. The new information is the problem. Let's just say 13 times 12, right? That's the new information. The old information in your short-term memory is the times tables, and then manipulating that so that you can figure out the problem. It's like a table full of tiles, and every tile is a piece of information. And when the tabletop gets full of tiles and you push another tile on, another tile fall off, right?
Right.
So it's limited. Your working memory is limited to how much it can hold. And that's designed appropriately because we really don't want to remember every single fact thing that ever happened all day long. Yeah. We can't. It just would be emotionally too heavy. I know there's some people that claim they can remember what they ate, you know, on this date and that year. And those are kind of people who are outliers, and they have a horrible existence, I would think,
hard.
to know all that all the time. So working memory allows you also to retain information while working on a task, even if that stimulus had disappeared. So you took away the times table chart, right? Your working memory should help you and fill in that information, that stimulus. Mm-hmm. But as we know, that's probably one of the harder things for our kids to learn, because it takes up much space up on that table.
Yeah.
Okay. So in just accommodating somebody with poor working memory, we should just give them the times table right next to them while they're doing their work, because eventually they'll learn it by being exposed to it and doing it repetitiously. So seeing that times table there and helping them to, you know, figure that out with lines, different colored highlighted lines, the memory is going to do much better if you expose them to it all the time. So reserving it to memory is not the best way to learn some things. Some things you just need more and more exposures of over time. Right. So that's what we have to ask from our kids. We want excellence, but the other axis is what time that's going to take. And that's what has to change. So we're always going to want our kids to do well in school. Some impairment from working memory is, working memory is like the electronic game Simon, right? Impairment is losing the information you have just learned. When you're playing this game Simon, you're able to, you know, follow along for maybe 3 cycles, and then that's it for me. I don't think I get past 2. And I like, okay, this game stinks, you know, goodbye. So developing a good working memory depends on how well you access your working memory in your brain. If you don't have good access to it, you're not going to develop it, and you're not going to develop any of the executive skills unless you have access to it. So if that part's not lighting up, you're not going to be able to develop those skills as well as kids or adults who don't have this disorder. So it leaves you a little bit in the back. Okay, another one. So, wait, sorry, where am I? I think I'm a little ahead of myself here. Or I got my slides mixed up. Okay. Internalization of speech. No, you know what it is? This is new. So, working memory is our internal language. Verbal working memory is that voice in your head that talks to you all day long. Not that voice, but the other voice, the one that's telling you, okay, we're going to get in the car, we're going to drive to the supermarket, we're going to get out, lock the key. You know, it's just this. It's our mind's voice. You know, it's the way we converse with ourselves, and we give ourselves instructions or question ourselves. So it's that internal working, what they call verbal working memory. So speech internalizes about the age of 5. That's when kids stop talking out loud when they're doing things. And I know my mother-in-law, it never internalized. When she's cooking, she talks to herself, and she goes, you don't mind, she's so sweet about it. She goes, you don't mind that I talk to myself when I do things? I'm like, no, Mom, I'm okay. I love my mother-in-law, by the way, she's a doll. But I could see where speech did not internalize. And on the same point with my husband, he would talk to me as if he were planning things. It sounded like we were planning things, and basically he was just figuring stuff out loud, but using me as a sounding board. And I'm not realizing that he's just thinking out loud. I'm thinking that he's changing his mind 15 times. And I used to get very frustrated with him. And it wasn't until I talked to somebody, his name is David Gewerk, he's the head of ADA. And he says, oh my God, I almost got divorced because and it was a big moment for me in my marriage too, because they didn't realize that he was doing that. And now if I catch him doing it, I was like, those are inside thoughts, you know. Are you just thinking out loud, or are you talking to me and, you know, planning stuff? So, you know, when blue blocks go with the blue blocks, disappears at age 5, it goes internal. Or not sometimes goes internal. Sometimes it remains outside. It remains external, and that's actually to exist. That's actually to get through our day. We need to do that. Everything you'll see as we go through this has to be externalized. So we can't rely on the internal stuff that we have, our executive skills, entirely, because they're not as good or as developed as they should be. So, so people will talk to themselves or talk to their problems outside. I just talked about that about my husband. And there was one study that was really interesting. The amount of speech and language problems in a subset of the cohort that had ADHD had significantly higher issues with this. Like 40% of the group did, whereas only 17% had language issues in the control group. So ADHD and language and dyslexia, they are all kind of connected. Learning disabilities can develop because of these poor executive skills. So this was new information, the first one. The internalization of speech also tends to present a deficit in the behavior. I'm sorry, wait a second. I can't see half of my slide.
Oh no.
I don't know how to move me down.
Oh wait,
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I got it now. Yeah, the internalization of speech also tends to present a deficit in these children. The lack of internal speech maturity causes difficulties in adopting behaviors governed by rules and a delay in moral development. That was something that's really surprised me. But knowing how much I know about prisoners with ADHD, that is absolutely spot on. It doesn't mean because your child has ADHD, they're going to be morally, you know, inept, or they're not going to develop morals. That's not what this means. But there could be a delay in such a thing, because we know from knowing that you can almost see sometimes when they portray somebody who is a criminal, you can see sometimes this lack of development in those principles and those in those executive skills, because they can't access that part of their brain. It's not really happening without, you know, with their consent. It's happening without their consent, but because of other factors in their lives, it pushes them down that path. So that was surprising. It was very bold of him to say that, but I 100% agree with it. It can, in some cases, in some circumstances, in some situations, in certain areas, certain families, it does happen. That they're handing out to 80% of the prisoners Ritalin or some sort of stimulant every day. It would be nicer if we didn't do that, right? But nicer if we didn't have people going in that direction, because not only does that happen, but other things happen, and they're not growing up in loving families. They're growing up in really tough stuff. So the next one is self-regulation of affect, motivation, arousal. And this is our ability to manage our emotions, your motivation, your ability to turn thoughts into motivation and motivation into action, and being able to consider new directions and different outcomes. That's a lot for a brain to do. And all of these are happening at the same time. Think of your brain as the conductor of this orchestra. And everything is playing together. They're not discrete. They don't happen one right after the other. They happen together. So, and that part of the brain I was talking about is the prefrontal and frontal areas of the brain. The ability to take all of our other executive functions and use them to create motivational, say it means to use words, images, awareness to process and alter how we feel about things. How well you can motivate yourself to complete a task when there is no immediate external consequence is interesting, because all other species are what we call Skinnerian. They all are response stimulus organisms. They don't have the ability to pause in the absence of a consequence, meaning, you know, that they haven't learned otherwise, you know, with a swat on the nose, to not do something. They can't pause. They can't redirect themselves to a better future like humans can.
Right.
Some executive ability is in chimpanzees and elephants, but not to the degree humans can do this. It's a very sophisticated function, and we're just starting to learn about how we do that stuff. But that definitely speaks to how this disorder, you know, it gets us in trouble. Pretty badly sometimes, not only in school, but in other areas of our life with our relationships and with trying to finish school and employment and bosses. Oh my God, the list goes on. So if there's an inadequate access to this area, it will be harder for the emotional development of the children. There is a 30%, up to a 30% delay in social emotional growth with kids who have ADHD, up to. So your kid who's 10 acts more like a 7-year-old and wants to be hanging out with the little kids. And your 12-year-old, you know, he's acting more like a 9-year-old, and he likes to hang out with the adults. And they very rarely like to hang out with their same aged peers. The adults, you know, they don't care, and the little kids, they don't notice that you have age inappropriate behaviors. So my oldest, she hung out with the adults. My son, he was always playing with the little kids. He always was extremely good with little kids. He was so responsible, and so he's going to be a great daddy. And and you know, it's fun. You can't tell kids sometimes this, you know, they don't understand what it means at all to be a father, but you see it because you know that that's a quality that you just can't, you're born with that, you know, you have that in you. Cortical thickening. Cortex of the brain is that very thin layer that hardwires as we get older. And it's kind of like the candy coating on an ice cream, you know, that thin chocolate layer. And that thickening over time is also delayed. So we kind of think that the two have something to do with one another. And they showed, the NIH did this really good study with these moving functional MRIs, and you could see how much slower the cortex was thickening over time in the ADHD brain, and how fast the other brain was in developing that. So that's where parents, I think, have to take a breath and say, he's not going to be able to do some things because his brain is actually smaller. It's 2 to 3% smaller, but that doesn't affect intelligence. It affects surface area, and surface area means the space to do things, right? So all of that micro neurobiology that's going on, all those transfer of the neurotransmitters from nerve cell to nerve cell, they don't have as much highway as the other brains do. So that's why this is a chronic delay in some cases. We had my son's brain CT'd because he was having problems with the fluorescent lights. He said that it made him like close his eyes. It hurt him. It gave him a headache. So the doctor was just being careful. And that was one of the things that they pointed out on the CAT scan, that his right hemisphere was somewhat smaller. And kind of consistent with a lot of kids with ADHD. And the amounts of expression with ADHD, as we know, are extremely high. So there are greater amounts of expressed emotion. So things that are bugging them, they're not as good as keeping them internal, they expressing them. So, you know, you bump your toe and you scream out, you know, and they're going on for a good minute. So to rein it back in, like, you know, I don't know, I'm of the Fonzie generation. Remember when Fonzie You know who I'm talking about?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes,
I've seen it. I've seen it.
Okay. Fonzie would, like, you know, start to go over the top, and then he would just kind of, he did this kind of cool move and he reined it all back in again, because, you know, Fonzie was not ever out of control of his emotions. So I always think of that when I talk about regulation. And the last one, reconstitution. This is also what we used to call planning and problem solving. Planning and problem solving also includes the sense of hindsight and foresight. So kids don't really learn very well from their mistakes because of this particular executive skill not being as good. So they can't use past experiences to help them not do it again in the future. And then you put working memory on that and emotional dysregulation. You've got a kid that is trying 1,000 times harder than a typical kid is, just to sit up straight, just to sit still. That kid is putting out more energy, and they use it all. I mean, you know, when your kids come home from school or at some point of the day, they've lost their fuel, their emotional fuel. And Dr. Barkley, he explains it like this. He goes, beautiful rocket. It's got this advanced guidance system and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it has absolutely no fuel in the tank. So it's useless, right? Not that our kids are useless, but I mean, the kids can't be productive if they don't have this happening for them. So the ability to reconstruct, analyze solutions and behaviors and drive goals into the future. So they don't have what they call metacognition, the ability to have intrapersonal intelligence, like understand what's going on inside them and give it a name. And that's hard because I don't know if you can really help that outside of allowing development with access to the brain, help that situation. So what gives you access to the brain? A lot of things: yelling, screaming, exercising, medication. Let's see, anything that gets the neurotransmitters going. Eating gives you access to your brain better. That's why people, when they feel tired, they eat something, because it helps to create dopamine. 70% of your dopamine is made in your stomach. So sometimes people have weight issues when they have ADHD, amongst all the other stuff that is really difficult with, you know, inhibiting and eating, you know, everything you want without much breaks, you know, and the ability to have concern for people besides self and family. This develops later on in life, but you might start seeing it when they're little. I know I was really harsh with my daughter because I didn't know she had ADHD. I just thought she was selfish. And, you know, I would use those terms back then a little bit more to explain behavior, and those terms don't mean too much to me anymore. Selfishness, lazy, unmotivated. I don't see this now as a part of what we can say about our kids, because this is just this is ADHD. And she would never hang the rug up after she went into the bathroom and took her shower, and it always was there. And I always go in my feet and it would be wet, and I would go, Megan. And all this time I didn't understand that was not her being mean or selfish or just, you know, sticking it to mom, because you think that way, right? And it had everything to do with this ability to develop empathy, and an empathy that's deep rooted. So this is a new term for me also, this generativity. And I think the best way to explain it is it's making your mark in the world, and creating or nurturing things that will outlast you as an individual. So leaving the planet better than you did, you know, then you got it. And the opposite of this is stagnation, which I have experienced a lot of with my son. So impairment and of reconstitution is play behavior is less mature, less symbolic, less creative. My son, I don't think pretended to do, like kids will pretend play, and I don't remember seeing him doing pretend play as much as I did see the girls doing it, like with dolls and stuff like that. And as a kid, I couldn't play with dolls. I play with stuffed animals, but not with Barbie dolls. I guess, I don't know, I was poor to get that kind of stuff. But I did pretend to like be a teacher, so it's all good. Some experts have discovered poor performances in verbal fluency tasks. Answers they provide to the problems are less adequate. I think when they did verbal fluency with my son in his neuropsych evaluation, which is a really good evaluation to get for your kid. If it is in the aim to improve their education, they won't pay for it. So it has to be for something else. I don't know how you can split hairs with the insurance company to get that, but I know right off the bat, they will make you go through the school system versus paying for it because it's expensive. But what it does is it kind of teases out all of the reasons behind the behavior. So all the brain function behind what you're seeing as behavior will be included in a neuropsych evaluation. And verbal fluency was one of the things, of course, they tested for. And he did have some really low scores in language areas of pragmatic and what's the other one? So one thing I did learn was when people in your family stand next to you and say, oh, is there any jelly left? You know, what they're really asking for is, can you come and find it for me? Your husband opens the refrigerator door and then all of a sudden there's the questions, you know, do we have any jelly left? I'm like, yeah, we have jelly. I don't buy into it anymore. I'm married too long. And at first he, you know, so it's this inference that they're making. It's not really a communication as like a direct question. It's kind of like, wow, it's cold in here, you know? And what you mean is like, can you go up and close the window, you know? So that is something I experience with my husband and his ADHD. But so planning, problem solving is also negatively impacted. Hindsight, foresight, the overall sense of time, there is what they call a myopia or a blindness to the future. So being able to take steps and dog them to death till you get there is very difficult. One of the women that wrote a pretty good book on ADHD has a very bright but nerdy husband. And one of the times she was lecturing, she said, my husband put a sock in the hallway one day. And when I asked him about it, he said, you know, what it was, did you drop this? He says, oh no, I put that there because I have to remember to change the oil in the car tomorrow. So, this was this creative, novel way of helping him to remember something, because he would forget to put messages in the phone. I used to pull my hair out saying to my son, why don't you just set an alarm? And you won't have to have everybody wake you up and, you know, get you going. You can do it on your own and nobody will have to get angry at each other. And it's not in the knowing, it's in the performing. It's not that they don't know what to do, it's that they don't do what they know. And it's because it's a performance deficit, not a knowledge deficit. And that's an important distinction to make with ADHD, that it's hard to do what you know.
Oh, what? There's a quick question. Is ADHD genetic? But I don't know if we want to interrupt, but.
No, perfect. No. It's fine.
Okay.
Yes, ADHD is second in heredity to your height.
Wow.
So very, very, very genetic, yes. And it shares a lot of common variants on the genome with other disorders, namely autism, bipolar, schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, which is depression with suicidal ideation, and ADHD. All are very they're ticking the same boxes on the genome.
Okay.
So a lot of symptoms are going to be the same, and there's going to be a lot of comorbidity.
Got it.
So almost all kids with autism have some degree of ADHD, but not the other way around. All kids, a lot of people with bipolar disorder have ADHD too. That's something we see a lot of. It's almost a given. It's like 98% almost. And that's because of this genetic variants being identical. They figured that out, I think it was in 2015, so about 6 years ago. Dr. Swanson presented that at one of the CHAD conferences. Back then it was a CHAD conference. Now it's ADHD International Annual Conference, because there's several different groups that participate in it. And at one of the pre-conference institutes, kind of like where they present their posters, they present their research, and mostly clinicians and researchers attend this. I sat there and I like scribbled furiously to try to keep up with this man, but this is what he was saying. He says that they are finding that all of these coexisting features of ADHD are very common with those 5 that I mentioned. So yes, it is something you got from your bio mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I know I got mine from my grandfather, because he never had a job longer than a couple of months when he was younger. And he retired very early. My grandmother, she was the breadwinner. Okay, so I'm going to skip over that. Go through the while we're on the rail there. More than 2/3 of individuals with ADHD have at least one coexisting condition. It's about 80%, and 60% for 2. So look for it, because not everything is explained and not everything is ADHD's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And medication for ADHD doesn't seem to be working. It's probably because there's something else going on. There's something else brewing, and is the direct result of having ADHD. So when people come into the doctor's office and say, oh, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I have got this and that going on, they never screen them for ADHD, which is very surprising, but it's not common practice to say to them, when you were younger, were you diagnosed with ADHD? This is a foundational quantitative disorder. That means it says like how well you see, how well you shoot a basketball. It is not qualitative in the sense that it's not the quality of the degree of impairment. Okay, that's hard.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. Qualitative is like autism. Autism, they're going to get up to the top of the bar that they're in their bar, but they're not going to be able to skip up to a next bar.
Mm-hmm.
In improvement. Right. Whereas ADHD is not like that. Executive systems can be improved. They've done it with working memory and games like Luminosity on the internet. That's all about expanding working memory. But with that, you have to do it very frequently, like 5 days a week for an hour each day for about 5 weeks. And then they show actual improvement in the top of your tile table has more tiles now.
Yeah.
It could fit more tiles. So there is proof that it is what we call neuroplasticity. And we hear that term thrown around a lot. ADHD mimics.
One question. Somebody had asked me earlier, I forgot to get her, Kate, about what is a tic disorder?
A tic disorder, it is, we heard of Tourette's, but tic disorders are ones that are, that produce involuntary, verbal, physical, excessive movements or utterances that are not wanted.
Right.
I think everybody knows what a tic could look like. It could be as bad as shouting out obscenities, but it could be something very small, like my grandmother would clear her throat all the time. So I'm not sure if she had anything like a tic disorder. She might have had something going on that we didn't know about, but nobody would ever be able to tell her what it was.
Right.
She would apologize all the time. She goes, I ask the doctor all the time what this is, you know. But with stimulants, it can get worse. So some people decide to do the medication differently. They'll do a non-stimulant or something that doesn't aggravate the existing tic disorder.
Right.
Wow, I wish I had Sam Zinner sitting next to me now, because he would elaborate a lot more on that.
Oh, no, that's great.
There is a lot of information out on the internet, and the Tourette's Association is fantastic. They've got some really good videos out there. I've seen one of them. It's I have Tourette's, but Tourette's doesn't have me.
Oh.
Now, Tourette's is like coexisting with ADHD about 9 or 10% of the time. I'm not sure if that has gone up with the other prevalences, but it definitely, when you watch that video, you could see the kids have other stuff going on too.
Got it.
They do have ADHD and as well. So it is a lot of kids with ADHD have epilepsy and other neurobiological issues too. So it can string around, and depends on the genetics, the way those dice are rolled. But ADHD also needs to be differentiated between other problems that you can have or your kids can have. And when we were in the process of getting a diagnosis for my son, we took him to the pediatric audiologist, and we took him to the pediatric ophthalmologist, and we wanted to make sure that we were not, missing something that was organic, that was, fixable in other ways. There are some thyroid problems that might cause inattention. Sleep disorders can cause inattention, learning disabilities, fetal alcohol syndrome, but people would know about that, I would think, but not necessarily, because if it's not your biological kid, you might not know that. Traumatic brain injury, and a film with a brain injury on it and ADHD on it, you can't even tell them apart sometimes.
Oh.
So yeah, it's interesting. Hypoglycemia and other environmental social factors can mimic ADHD. So that's kind of important to rule all of that out and have fun going from doctor to doctor. It's hard for the kids, it really is. And we kept talking to them about, we kept talking to my son about that. My daughter didn't get an official diagnosis. She got a mommy diagnosis. But I think she's talked to a few people about it. And she actually trialed medicine once. Unfortunately, she took Focalin, which I don't know if you've heard about this, but anecdotally, I've heard more problems than good stuff with Focalin. It kind of exacerbates the anxiety part, and that was the wrong thing to give her for hopefully a home run, because after that she didn't want it. She called me up and said, I did all my tax stuff, I can't believe I did it, because this was boring and stuff that you had to drag out of her. But she was so impressed with how it helped her, but it hurt her in more with exacerbating her anxiety. And so she just keeps her little busy self busy. This is the one that ran and swam.
Right.
Okay, so here, more doom and gloom, the consequences of untreated ADHD. Our research shows that ADHD is much more than neurodevelopmental disorder. It's a significant public health issue, and I can't say that enough. In evaluating the health consequences of ADHD over time, we found that ADHD adversely affects every aspect of quality in life and longevity. This is due to the inherent deficiencies in self-regulation associated with that. Fill in the word for me.
With ADHD that lead to poor self-care and impulsive high-risk behavior.
The findings are sobering, but also encouraging, as ADHD is the most treatable mental health disorder in psychiatry because it's quantitative. It's like getting glasses on. But it's not just easy getting a prescription. It's also getting the education piece of this, getting to know, the other parts of it, the behavioral management, the parent training, that all has to happen. You can't just give your kids medicine and say, oh, now I have a typical child to parent. It doesn't work like that, because probably if you are the bio parents of this child, you or your husband or both of you have the disorder as well. And that's the part, that I'm not afraid to say, get yourself screened for it. Know for sure, because everybody has this feeling like, oh, I did that when I was a kid. Yeah, okay, there you go. This is what has brought us here, and we got to stop making it a thing with stigma. We have to have pride in knowing our diagnosis and knowing what we're up against and how to take care of it.
Yep.
So not treating ADHD. Substance use disorders, very, very, very frequently, not treating ADHD leads to this, because eventually as an adult, that's really when the stuff happens to you. I mean, when you're a kid, you have your parents to kind of be the frontal lobes for you and help you through. But when you're an adult on your own, you're going to cope somehow, and it's going to be with non-medical treatment. It's going to be with other stuff. Not finishing school. 90% of ADHD, kids with ADHD or adults with ADHD don't finish college. Right here, one of them. So tried, went back in 2014, still haven't gotten it there. I don't know, we'll see. Low paying employment, relationship problems, divorce is high amongst ADHD couples. Employment issues, social problems, motor vehicle accidents, very, very high amongst ADHD youth. I went to a seminar in the Chad of Mercer County with the designer of the graduated license that we have. It's like this way when, it's a vertical, right? When you're under 21, and then becomes horizontal when you are 21. That brought the deaths down from like 8,000 in 1 year to 800. And I know that 800 is too many.
Right.
But significantly dropped the amount of deaths related to alcohol use and driving among teenagers. I mean, just in my kids being, here and the three of them going through high school, it seemed like every other year there was a fatality with their friends or friends. They all knew each other, and that's hard. It really is hard. Yeah. One thing that's not on here is suicide. Suicide is higher amongst children with ADHD. And I do say children because at age 11 or younger, they have completed suicide. So it's something to pay attention to. If your child says hopeless things to you or is writing things, or depression doesn't look like adult depression. It looks like pissed off kid. We're mad all the time. We're irritable all the time. And it's different from normal teenager stuff or normal kid stuff. So have them screened if you think they might have depression with we all think about it. I'm sure everybody in their lives has thought about it. It's just when those hopeless thoughts start coming out and start turning into plans, and it's something very important to pay attention to. I didn't get that the first time around, because I thought he's just being more clever. He wants what he wants. He's adding more onto it. And it wasn't. It was, hey, you're not paying attention to the right things here.
Yeah.
So unplanned pregnancies, STDs, more interaction with the law for sure. So that's the bad news. What I've learned from a meme. I love this one. Okay, and I'm gonna have to go. Would you read it?
Can you see it? Okay, so parenthood. Well, I can't read. Parenthood is about raising and celebrating the child you have, not the child you thought you'd have. It is about understanding your child is exactly the person they are supposed to be. And if you're lucky, they might be the teacher who turns you into the person you're supposed to be. That's beautiful.
It is.
That
And
is
it
beautiful.
was absolutely true with my son, because he was hospitalized when he was 11 for suicidal ideation. And I learned so much from helping him. He did indeed turn into the teacher, you know.
Yeah, no, same here. My son was 10 and he's, you know, and I just have learned so much, and you know, it's something that really gets your perspective like shifted.
It does. And I think when we're dealing with our kids, and this will be another webinar.
Yeah.
When we talk about the collaborative and proactive solutions, it is the first thing is the mind shift has to happen. The mindset shift has to happen. So you have to put on new lenses. You have to start seeing this with a disability perspective, because this isn't something that they can turn on, turn off. This happens to them without their consent. And that's hard, because you know, you don't want to look at your kid and see, you know, ADHD. You want to see your baby,
Right.
And you want to have that relationship with your kid that is, you are the one person that thinks the sun shines out his butt, because that's who they want you to remain. And with ADHD, it's really hard to be that person, you know, because we're constantly directing and managing them because of their ADHD. So getting the information, getting the training, getting medical help if you don't already have it. So important. It has to be a multimodal approach. Chad is here, guys. We have a call center. We have me. We'll definitely, you could just look up Try Chad New Jersey. It's TRICHADDNJ. And my makeup will come up. Yeah.
Trychad.org, right?
Yep. You can put my phone number there and my email. I didn't get it on the slide. But if you want to also go to the Chad website, here's a little picture of it. I managed to slap on there last minute. They've improved their website so much, but there's so many things to circle yourself with. There's local chapters of Chad, there's ADHD specialists, there's educators, something for educators, for adults, for parents. They did adult to adult and parent to parent and teacher to teacher. They have for professionals, training and continuing medical education credits for free to train on how to treat adult ADHD and screen people for it. There's also the resource directory, which is great because it also has kind of pre-qualified the doctors a little bit by knowing that they treat a lot of people with ADHD or a lot of kids with ADHD, and that they belong to an ADHD organization. So their interest in treating it and knowing about it is good. And that's why you would pick a doctor, right? You want to know that they are, you know, it's not just a hobby. They treat a large percentage of ADHD people. We also have the, it's going to be on line again this year. We decided not to go ahead with an in-person conference because we just don't know how many people would be able to do that, especially after all the losses this year of finances and so forth. So, but we really reached a lot of people with our conference this year, which was amazing. And it's a lot more economical, to say the least.
Yeah.
We had actually, Sinbad was our, was one of our lived experience.
No way.
Yeah, Sinbad is awesome.
That's great.
He's a very funny guy, and his parents were very good. Even being he's around my age and lived in the 60s, well 60s, sorry, 70s and 80s. Yeah, but his, back then families really weren't well versed in ADHD, but they didn't have to be, in particular in his family. They had the understanding that everybody develops at their own rate, and they were very patient with him. So he had good support, and that's really nice to hear. And that's, I think, thank you, everybody. You were so nice to be here. Please, if you have questions, if you're still there.
Oh, yes, they're still here. Guys, feel free to unmute yourself. And Erica, did you want to say something?
Yeah, before, I know there's at least one question in the chat, which is a great question I was thinking of too, but I just wanted to thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'm not going to speak for anybody else but myself, but my mind was blown with so much of what you're saying. I didn't know what I was going to take from this, and I wasn't sure what, this totally was going to be about, but I really connected to a lot of what you're saying, honestly, for myself and for my little one who's been struggling with things for a few years, and you pinpointed so much for me to just go to her therapist to talk about and just ask questions. Like you presented with so much to just ask about that. Right. I appreciate the perspective in seeing that, like, I'm not losing it to think there are certain, I don't know. It reinforced some things that I appreciate. So I'm usually more articulate than this, but I really appreciate it. So
there's a lot going on with ADHD, and it's really complex, and it's really overwhelming at times, because it's just like, oh my God, can this kid just like have normal, like everyday problems, and not have all the top 10 every day, all day long? Exactly. It's exhausting. It really is. But I tell you this from the bottom of my heart, they do grow out of some of those things. Okay.
Well, hopefully I'll see the other side.
Sister anymore, because you know what? They went to karate together. She'll lay him out flat, 6 foot and everything.
Before we get to questions in the chat,
Erica.
Before we get to the questions in the chat, I'm selfishly going to ask some questions since I have before.
Go ahead. Yes.
And they might be beneficial to other people. I don't know. One that I wanted to ask, and I really don't want to know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask anyway. What role does screen time play in all of this? Because I know I'm guilty of, especially during the pandemic, giving my child way too much screen time, and then I feel guilty that it's exacerbating a lot of what I see. And I just wonder if you could touch on that briefly.
I think parents worry about video games a lot, and because with ADHD, there are not a lot of accomplishments going on. I think everybody can nod their head with that. And as far as comparing to, say, neurotypical child, so the accomplishments come from the video games, because the success there is easily accessed, and your self-esteem is tied to the amount of accomplishments that you have and do. And because kids and adults with ADHD want so many things during the day, they have so many ideas during the day, they naturally have this sense of underproductivity. And that leads to thinking, well, I don't know I'm not that great at anything. But you understand the negativity that humans are biased with, unfortunately, pushes them into feeling bad about themselves. So when they're playing video games, so long as it is commensurate with people time, it's fine. Let them have that, because I think that's like street credit. I think that's like, I can go to my friend and it's like talking sports almost, you have an expertise in something. And that, I noticed that with my son, and even when it was very unpopular to the kids have, access to video games, I was the one letting him have it, because I said, you know what? He's not going to camp. He's not going to scouts. He's not doing anything except for karate. Thank God he did that. But he would have so much accomplishment from those games. I did this, I did that. I'm at this level. I'm at, that's something important. And it's not detrimental at all. What is detrimental is if it's instead of human contact, so put time in those for, playing board games together, but do them earlier in the day, because board games at like 5 o'clock at night with an ADHD child is like, you're going to get a board game thrown at you.
Not that I've ever experienced that before.
Yeah, like Saturday morning. Yeah, Saturday morning's a good time. Maybe after cartoon time. I don't know. Is there still Saturday morning cartoon time?
They're all the time now.
Yeah, it's all...
It's not like just on Saturday morning, but Saturday morning is the best time because we know before 12 o'clock our children are manageable. After 12 o'clock, it's like a downward spiral until you hit the witching hour, and then it's time for bed. At least it was in my house. So anything that you're going to do that involves social stuff should be done in the morning, 12 o'clock. At the end of the day, when they don't really have that emotional fuel anymore, let them scream it out with their friends online. Yeah, or read or whatever it is.
There's a question in the chat, which was, you want me to, I can read it.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Because I wondered this as well. What doctors do you typically work with for those with ADHD?
Well, the top of the list would be a child and adolescent psychiatrist because they can do the pharmacy very well. And if you do decide to do medication, whoever is taking care of that, you would expect them to micromanage it. Because when you're doing polypharmacy or, you know, something for anxiety, something for the ADHD, something for the mood disorder, like in my son's case, he's got pretty much a cocktail going there. You have to have somebody paying attention to that. And like I said, if, you know, you're using your primary care doctor, that's okay. But if you notice that there is anxiety or depression or coexisting stuff coming on, you might want to switch that to somebody who's a little bit more knowledgeable. Anybody who, like I said, treats a large percentage of kids with ADHD and has an interest in it and wants to, you know, and is maybe connected to ADHD organization. A good place to find somebody outside of the CHAD resource directory is through AppSard. It's
I'll write it down.
Apple, Peter, Sam, again, Apple, Robert, Delta, AppSard.
AppSard.com?
Yeah. Or .org probably.
Oh, .org, okay.
It's the American Professional Society for Attention-Related Disorders.
Okay, yeah, AppSard.org. So let me just change that.
In their professional directory will be people who are just drawn to this type of disorder, or very good at treating it. It also helps to ask around a little bit, ask for, you know, personal recommendations. My son's doctor is also the medical director for New Jersey System of Care for Children Behavioral Health Services. You know, I miss a lot too for my ADHD. You know, for years he's telling me, call Perform Care. And I'm like, right over my head. He never explained to me who Perform Care was. And that is the contracted system administrator for children's behavioral health. It is administered through New Jersey, and it's not connected to your income, so it's free for everybody. It is money that's from federal money, and you can get in-home therapists. You can possibly get camp. It's a little late. They usually start in January to sign people up for ADHD camp or for, you know, specialized camp, kids with autism and so forth. But you can get behavioral health services through what they call contracted, oh God, totally blew it.
Perform Care?
No, CMOs like.
CMOs, right, okay. Care manage, no.
Thank you, care management organizations.
Yeah.
Right, like Monmouth.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you guys,
yeah.
So my son, we had Perform Care early on when my son was hospitalized. Mm-hmm. And it's the FSO, the Family Support Organization for Union County, and it's that's actually for the parent. You can actually get somebody assigned to you to go to your IEP meeting, like an advocate. They're very helpful. There's also there's one family support.
County,
yeah. So every county has one.
Has a family support.
So, yeah, and the family support. Like the it's the same acronym. I always get them confused. There's a Family Support Organization and there's FACT families and communities together.
Yeah.
That's where you can have the assistance for your child.
Family Success
in Union
Center?
County. Yeah, families and communities together is for Union County, which we're,
yeah.
So
like, just look for family support organization and then put your county in, or go to the New Jersey website, the health and health services.
Right.
That's that umbrella, that big canopy of, it used to be the Department of Children and Families. I'm not sure what they call it now. But this is through, you can receive services, and I did for many years with my son. Oh my gosh, because he would not go to a therapist. He still won't. And the only person he talks to is the psychiatrist. Right. So, you know what? It was important that they came here to our house, and they spent maybe 10 minutes with him. He put his hoodie up like a typical teenager and right up the stairs. And I usually went up sitting there perfecting my elevator speech with them. But I also taught a lot of things that they now, you know, probably are using. So yeah, there is a lot available through the Children's System of Care in New Jersey. Another one is what they call crisis and mobile. I messed it up. I ruined my delivery here. Mobile response and crisis intervention. It's a way for you to manage a meltdown, a severe meltdown, without calling the police, because not every police station is trained in how to respond to a non-violent, you know, emotional seizure, if we want to call it that. You know, they do actually the police here in my town were phenomenal. They had to come once because mobile response couldn't make it in time, and it's usually two licensed social workers that come to the house, and they screen the child to see if they really do need to go to the hospital. And I think in 2010 they did a pilot study that out of the 500 calls that they went on, only 10 kids actually needed to go to the hospital. And that was important because then you kind of, you don't have that secondary trauma of actually having to be hospitalized. Unfortunately, sometimes it's necessary, and it feels like the worst thing that you're doing, but it's absolutely the right thing to do.
We have on our Stigma Free Springfield Facebook page posted all of the Union County resources, and mobile crisis is one of the resources that's on that list. It used to be pinned to the top, but it's definitely there, but I don't remember if it's in the photos or if it was pinned to the top.
Okay, I'll bring it up. But we have
that there because I've experienced that, not with my own children, but I've been in a situation for it, and it is very beneficial.
Even if you're a teacher, you can make referrals to the system of care, because you know what?
I've done a lot at school in my 20 years of teaching in a Title I school. Yeah, so unfortunately I've seen it happen a bunch, but yeah, it is a useful resource.
Oh, can you share the PDF? I'm sorry, Eva. I just wanted to ask you, the slides that you have, is it available if
I'll send you the PDF.
That would be great. Okay, guys. So I can email it to all the attendees if you guys want it. I'll see if, you know.
Actually, I was trying to print it out, and my husband did something to my printer. I know he did, because his name is on the printer now. He's like, I didn't do that. I'm like, but your name is on the printer now and it won't print. So I turned it into a PDF. So it's already ready to go, and I'll pop it over to you then. Anybody got any else?
Any other questions? Do we have any other questions, guys?
You've been wonderful for being attentive for so long. Thank you.
Oh, we got, I think we have somebody here. Hi, Selena.
Hey, how are you? I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you so much. It was really, really helpful.
Oh, yeah, we'd love to see people. Yay.
You can call me anytime. I know that's a rare thing amongst people that do this kind of stuff.
I might take you up on that. You better be careful. No,
no, you better be careful, because you know what? Anybody that is the least bit helpful is like my vice president, you know, and chair of finance, and people don't think I'm serious about that, but I do, because you know what? There are people like us that are on this call that know what it is to walk through this day that we have, and we share a lot of that stuff that just, I guess, other parents don't have to understand. And that puts you in a very special place. That makes it really important that we have others around us who speak that same story and know that pain of your kid, you know, saying that he doesn't want to be around anymore, and he's 11. You know, that kind of really makes an impression on you. And after my son did his first IOP program, intensive outpatient program, there was a support group that the kids would go watch a movie instead of having, you know, something to do, and the parents would have a support group. And that's why I started doing this, was because one of the men, he said, who gives you permission to grieve for the kid you thought you were going to have? And I was just like, whew, it just kind of really hit home with me, because that was something I never addressed before. I never said to myself, you know, it's okay that you grieve for the kid that you thought you know, that for 9 months you were building up in your head. You know, he's like my husband, he said, you know, this kid was following me around asking me, Daddy, teach me this, teach me that, you know. And my son is nothing like that. Oh my God, he's just like his father, who didn't want nothing to do with him. He's like,
can I ask you something, Eva? You just made me think of something. Do you in regards to something like support groups, once the world is back to a better place where people can meet, one of the things Stigma Free Springfield has started trying to do, we worked with DBSA and they've done support groups, and we've hosted them basically. Is that something that your organization could do?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We'd love to talk to you more about that.
I grew up in Union County. I was born in Elizabeth.
Oh my God, yes.
I was born in Union, but I grew up in Elizabeth. I was a block away from East Jersey, from Broad Street. My
grandfather taught at Elizabeth High School auto body for a long, long time.
Do you remember Frankie the cop?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I just remember him teaching there and always fixing our cars.
Frankie and the cop and I had a relationship because they always would lose my mother. She said to me, best thing she ever said to me, Eva, if you get lost, go stand by Frankie. You know, there was this little shoe store and it had like a window, and I just sat in there and waited for her to come back. Even though I knew how to walk home, it was just the whole idea of being separated.
Oh, so we got a question, guys. One question, Katya. Katya asked, does diet help with ADHD?
Yes. Okay, here's the thing with diet. Diet helps, period. Optimizing their nutrition is very important. The problem is most kids with ADHD only like white food, carbs. And this is natural because they're feeding strike that, I never said that word. They're feeding this microbiological process that's not happening. Remember when I said that the brain is somewhat smaller and there's a little less surface area? In addition to that, on the ends of the nerves, right, you got 2 nerve cells, and these little chemicals make a jump from one end of the nerve cell to the next, and those are the neurotransmitters we call dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and so forth. On the ends of these, there's vesicles, and they spit out the dopamine, and the dopamine goes over to the other side, and the other side doesn't take it. The receptacles are closed, or it takes it and it breaks it down into its components, or this side, which spitting it out, cannot reload and fire the next neurotransmitter. So there's also a complicated problem going on between neurotransmission process. And anything that improves your neurotransmission process is going to come in the form, unfortunately, of junk food, you know, because that's going to produce a lot of dopamine. So in the beginning, it's really important we model for our kids the right way to eat. And this is something that I couldn't have never conceived of. I didn't even know I had ADHD, but our diet was largely an American diet. And we look forward to all the good, fat, sweet, salty, sour stuff at the end of the day. And we modeled for our children the wrong things to eat. I wish I could turn back time and just say, hey, if you're going to have that chocolate chip cookie, hide it. You know, don't let them in on that. And, you know, try as best you can, but diet didn't cause ADHD, so it's not going to necessarily cure it. You might see a decrease if you're not giving them the junky food. If you're giving them healthy stuff, they're going to create that good micro gut biome, and they're going to just feel healthier. So optimizing the things you can is so important. But as far as reducing symptoms, the only thing we have to reduce the severity of symptoms is medication. So anything claiming to reverse ADHD or stop ADHD is just simply malarkey. Don't buy into that. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money, because I'm not 80 years old, but I know 80 years worth of paper and research. And the only thing that helps the core symptoms of ADHD, the inattention, impulsive hyperactivity, is medication, because it just produces more dopamine and it makes up for that misfiring and taking apart problem that they have. So,
Eva, how about neurofeedback? Have you seen any evidence of neurofeedback to help?
I never tried it myself. I've heard anecdotally that it has some good stuff in it, and that it's not a negative thing to do, but you have to be careful with how much you put your kids through. So much of what we think of is directed at them. And when you point your finger, remember the old adage, you got how many fingers pointed back at you.
Right.
And that means that parent training, parent screening, and I didn't know the third one. All right. You really should be taking a look at yourselves and parent modeling, I would say, would be the third one. Those are the 30 things. And that's hard work. You know, parenting isn't just remembering what your parents did and you just replicate that. It's being ahead of the curve. It's being a little proactive. And then if we do a collaborative and proactive overview, you're going to learn some really great.
We'd love to have that. If you would be able to do one of those workshops.
The diet,
Erica, this is something else that she's part of. She's done the TriChat. It's collaborative and proactive solutions with it's Dr. Robert Green, was it? No,
Ross Green.
Ross Green, yeah. Ross Green, and it's I have not looked into it that much, but it's a very just a healthy mindset for the parents.
Yeah, respectful way of raising your kids. Yeah.
I would love to do anything you have to offer. We could do a series over the extended period of time. I just think it's so beneficial, and this was so fascinating today. And
some of the good things that come out of the CPS are the mindset changing, and that's really helpful, because we had to kiss our father and mother's butts for 20 years. Now we're kissing our kids' butts. That's the way my husband says it.
I feel better. Okay.
We're in that generation that is stubborn a little bit to make that leap, and it's not obeying your children. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything though to do with understanding that children do well if they can, not if they want to. No child wants to fail. This is something that I think we think, they're sitting up at night going, how am I going to mess around with my mom? They ask us to carry a lot of their pain during the day. That's for sure. So sometimes it feels that way. And my ADHD feeds into that too, because my emotions can be intense. And so I have to be careful how I react. And reactive parenting was the worst thing for my son. So I didn't learn about this until he was about 15. But man, it works so good on my neurotypical child, like a magic thing. She called me back and she says, Mom, thank you so much for listening to me. They don't want you to fix. They want you to listen and acknowledge and validate them. So that there's a way to do that, and it's just following a simple kind of method about not fixing their problems, not being reactive, being proactive.
Yeah, I always have to practice
having the language to do that, and remembering the language to do that. All of us have been in that position where they start, you start. Don't you talk to me like that? Oh my God, F you back. And it's, I mean, not with little kids, hopefully, but I'm sure my son knew where that came from. We learn, you know, a little bit every day, all the time. I wish I had learned it earlier, but nobody in school or in my doctor's office ever said anything about chat. I had to find out on my own, you know. They had all the magazines.
This was amazing. And like I said, Sheila, we could definitely chat about doing some more things and thinking about possible, like a support group once the world is in a better position where we can do that. I think that would be cool to talk about. So we'll talk about behind the scenes for sure. And thank you for bringing Eva to us tonight. This was incredible.
Yeah, thank you, Eva, so much. We'll talk more. This was a small group. We didn't push this as much, so I think with the next one we can get some more, like, you know.
I put the Lives in the Balance, Dr. Green's website up there.
Okay, Lives in the Balance. Okay, great.
.org, and have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, have a great night. Thanks for sticking with us. Bye.